The dust rose in clouds behind the stagecoach as it rolled away, leaving Lucia Lawson standing alone on the dirt road with nothing but the worn carpetbag at her feet and a heart full of desperate hope. She watched the coach disappear into the shimmering heat of the California afternoon, wondering if she had made the biggest mistake of her life by traveling all the way to Downeyville with nothing more than a newspaper advertisement promising employment and a future that had to be better than the one she left behind in Philadelphia. The year was 1878, and Lucia had turned 22 just 3 days before boarding that westbound train, leaving behind a city that held nothing for her anymore except memories of her parents' deaths and debts she could never repay. The advertisement had been simple. Housekeeper wanted for ranch outside Downeyville, room and board provided, wages fair. She had written immediately, received a terse reply 2 weeks later, and spent her last dollars on the journey west. Now, standing in the middle of what could barely be called a town, she felt the weight of her decision settling on her shoulders like the dust that coated everything in sight. Downeyville was smaller than she had imagined, a collection of weathered buildings clinging to the steep hillsides where gold miners had once struck it rich. The rush was long over, and what remained was a quiet town of hardy souls who had chosen to stay. Lucia picked up her bag and started walking toward the general store, her practical gray traveling dress already showing signs of the long journey. Her dark hair, pinned carefully that morning, was coming loose in wisps around her face. She pushed through the door of the store, grateful for the shade. An older woman behind the counter looked up from her ledger, taking in Lucia's appearance with shrewd but not unkind eyes. "You look lost, dear." "I am looking for the Morgan Ranch," Lucia said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I was told it was outside town, but I am not sure which direction." The woman's eyebrows rose. "You are the one Marcus sent for, the housekeeper." "Yes, madam, Lucia Lawson." "Well, I will be," the woman said, coming around the counter. "I am Martha Hendricks. My husband owns this store." Marcus Morgan has been alone out there for 3 years now, ever since his wife passed. About time he got some help. She looked Lucia over more carefully. Though I expected someone older, truth be told, Lucia felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I assure you I am quite capable. I kept house for my parents until they passed, and then for my employer in Philadelphia." "I am sure you are, dear. Did not mean anything by it." Martha moved to the window and pointed. "You see that road heading north? Follow it about 5 miles. You will know the Morgan place when you see it. Big ranch runs right up to the mountains. Cannot miss it." 5 miles, Lucia repeated, looking at the sun already sinking lower in the sky. "I suppose I should start walking." "Walking? In this heat with that bag?" Martha shook her head. "You wait here. My husband is making a delivery out that way in about an hour. He will take you." The relief Lucia felt was so strong she nearly sagged. "Thank you. That is very kind." "Sit down before you fall down," Martha said, pulling out a chair. "You look about ready to collapse. When did you last eat?" "This morning. Some bread and cheese." Martha made a disapproving sound and disappeared into the back room, returning with fresh bread, butter, and cold chicken. "Eat. I will not have you arriving at the Morgan place looking half-starved." As Lucia ate, Martha talked, and Lucia learned more about Marcus Morgan than his brief letters had revealed. He was 30 years old, had inherited the ranch from his father, had married young to a woman named Sarah who died of fever 3 years back. He had no children. He kept to himself mostly, came to town for supplies once a month, paid his bills on time, and was generally regarded as a decent man who had been dealt a hard blow by life. "He is not much for conversation," Martha warned, "but do not mistake quiet for meanness. He has just been alone too long, I think. Probably forgotten how to talk to folks properly." When Martha's husband, A jovial man named George loaded her bag into his wagon. Lucia felt her nervousness returning. What if Marcus Morgan took one look at her and decided she would not do? What if he had expected someone matronly and respectable, not a young woman traveling alone? But there was no turning back now. She had no money for return passage and nowhere to return to even if she did. The wagon rattled along the dirt road, and George pointed out landmarks, talking about the area's history as a gold mining hub. "Those days are mostly gone," he said. "Now it is ranching and timber. Marcus does well enough with cattle. He is a hard worker, I will give him that." The sun was lowering when they turned onto a narrower road marked by a simple wooden sign that read, "Morgan Ranch." The land opened up before them. Acres of golden grass dotted with cattle, rolling toward pine-covered mountains in the distance. The ranch house itself came into view as they crested a small rise, and Lucia felt her breath catch. It was bigger than she expected. A solid two-story structure built of timber and stone, with a wide porch wrapping around the front. Several outbuildings stood nearby, including a large barn, a stable, and what looked like a bunkhouse. Everything was well maintained but had the air of a place that was merely functional, lacking the small touches that made a house a home. George pulled the wagon up to the front porch, and before Lucia could gather her courage, the front door opened. A man stepped out, and Lucia had her first look at Marcus Morgan O'Neill, though she would learn his full name later. The advertisement had simply said Morgan. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and the lean, muscular build of a man who did hard physical labor every day. His hair was dark brown, almost black, touched with sun lightening at the temples, and worn slightly longer than fashionable. His face was weathered from sun and wind, all strong angles and sharp lines, with a jaw that looked like it had been carved from granite. But it was his eyes that struck her most, a startling blue-gray that seemed to see right through her, set beneath dark brows that were drawn together in what might have been surprise or concern. He wore simple ranch clothes, dark trousers and a blue work shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing tanned forearms. There was dust on his boots and a weariness about him that went beyond physical exhaustion. "Evening, Marcus," George called out cheerfully. "Got a delivery for you." "This is Miss Lucia Lawson, your new housekeeper." Marcus came down the porch steps slowly, his eyes fixed on Lucia. She stood up in the wagon, suddenly very conscious of her disheveled appearance, and met his gaze. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Lucia saw surprise in his expression and something else she could not quite identify. Doubt, perhaps, or concern. "Mr. Morgan," she said, finding her voice. "I am pleased to meet you. I hope my arrival is not inconvenient." "No," he said, his voice deep and rough, as if he did not use it often. "No, I expected you, just—" He trailed off, then seemed to collect himself. "Welcome to Morgan Ranch, Miss Lawson." He reached up to help her down from the wagon, and his hand was warm and calloused, strong around hers. Lucia felt a strange flutter in her chest that she firmly ignored. She was here for employment, nothing more. George handed down her bag, declined Marcus's offer of coffee, and headed back toward town with a cheerful wave. The silence that fell after the wagon's rattle faded away was profound, broken only by the distant lowing of cattle and the whisper of wind through the grass. "I suppose I should show you the house," Marcus said finally, picking up her bag as if it weighed nothing. "It has been a while since I had anyone helping out. Place might be a bit rough around the edges." Lucia followed him up the porch steps and through the front door into a large main room that served as both parlor and dining area. Her first impression was of a space that was clean enough but utterly devoid of warmth or personality. The furniture was solid and practical but bare of any decoration. The windows had no curtains. The walls had no pictures. It was like walking into a place that had forgotten how to be lived in. "Kitchen is through there," Marcus said, gesturing to a door on the left. "My room is upstairs on the right. There are 2 other bedrooms. You can take whichever you prefer. The one on the left gets morning sun." "Thank you," Lucia said, looking around and already mentally cataloging all the work that needed doing. Marcus set her bag down by the stairs and shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable. "I do not know what you were told about the position. I need someone to keep the house, do the cooking, handle the washing and mending. I have 2 ranch hands, Billy and Tom, who live in the bunkhouse. They usually cook for themselves, but you are welcome to feed them if you want. I pay $10 a month plus room and board." $10 was more than fair, actually generous. Lucia nodded. "That is acceptable. When would you like me to start? Tomorrow is soon enough. You must be tired from traveling." He paused, still not quite meeting her eyes. "There is stew left from last night if you are hungry. It is not much, but it is edible. I am sure it will be fine." Another awkward pause stretched between them. Marcus rubbed the back of his neck, a gesture Lucia would come to recognize as his tell when he was uncertain. "Look, Miss Lawson, I need to be straight with you. I thought you would be older. Not that your age matters for the work, but this is an isolated place. The nearest neighbors are miles away. It is just me and 2 ranch hands. If you are uncomfortable with that, I will understand. I can pay your stage fare back to Sacramento." Lucia lifted her chin, meeting his eyes directly. "Mr. Morgan, I came here with nothing but hope that this position would provide me with a fresh start and honest work. If you are concerned about my reputation, I assure you I care far more about having a roof over my head and food to eat than what anyone might gossip about. If you are concerned about your own reputation, I will work hard to ensure no one has cause to question your character. And if you are concerned that I cannot do the work because of my age, I invite you to give me a chance to prove otherwise." For the first time, something that might have been a smile flickered across Marcus's stern face. "I can see you have some steel in you, Miss Lawson. That is good. You will need it out here." He moved toward the door. "I have work to finish in the barn before dark. Make yourself at home. If you need anything, just holler." Then he was gone, the door closing quietly behind him, and Lucia was alone in the silent house. She stood there for a moment, letting the reality of her situation sink in. She was in California, in a place so remote she could not hear another human voice, working for a man she did not know, with nothing but her own determination to see her through. "Hope is all we ever really need," she murmured to herself, remembering something her mother used to say. Then she picked up her bag and climbed the stairs to choose a room. The bedroom on the left was indeed flooded with the golden light of the setting sun. It held a simple bed with a plain wooden frame, a dresser, a washstand, and a small table with a chair. Like the rest of the house, it was clean but impersonal. Lucia set her bag on the bed and unpacked her few belongings, hanging her 2 other dresses in the wardrobe and arranging her brush, comb, and few other personal items on the dresser. When that was done, she went back downstairs to explore the kitchen. It was a good size, with a large cast iron stove, a sturdy work table, plenty of shelving, and a window overlooking the backyard. The stove was still warm, and she found the pot of stew Marcus had mentioned. She dished some into a bowl and sat at the small kitchen table to eat. The stew was actually quite good, hearty and well seasoned, which surprised her. Perhaps Marcus Morgan was not completely helpless in domestic matters. The thought made her smile slightly as she washed her bowl and spoon, then explored the rest of the kitchen. The pantry was adequately stocked with basics: dried beans and flour, salt and sugar, coffee, a few tins of preserved goods. The root cellar below held potatoes, onions, and carrots. There was a smokehouse out back, she noted, looking through the window. As darkness fell, Lucia lit a lamp and continued her exploration. The house revealed itself as solidly built and well-designed, but everywhere she looked, she saw the absence of a woman's touch. No curtains, no tablecloths, no rugs to soften the wooden floors. No pictures on the walls, no books on the shelves except for a few volumes about cattle ranching and a Bible. It was as if Marcus had stripped away everything that might remind him of the wife he had lost. Lucia found herself thinking about that as she climbed the stairs to her room, carrying the lamp with her. What had Sarah Morgan been like? Had she chosen the wallpaper in the bedroom, now faded and peeling in places? Had she stood at that kitchen window, watching for her husband to come in from the fields? And what had Marcus been like when she was alive? It was hard to imagine the taciturn man she had met today as someone who had loved and been loved. That night, Lucia lay in the unfamiliar bed, listening to the sounds of the California night through her open window. The air was cool and smelled of pine and grass. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, about the life she had left behind, about the uncertain future stretching before her. And despite everything, despite the strangeness and the isolation and the reserved employer, she felt something she had not felt in a long time. A tiny spark of possibility. She woke before dawn to the sound of roosters crowing and men's voices in the yard. By the time she had dressed and braided her hair, the sky was lightening to pearl gray. She went downstairs and found the kitchen empty but the stove already warm. Someone had been here recently and built up the fire. Lucia set about making breakfast, working efficiently in the unfamiliar space. She found eggs in the cold box on the back porch, along with bacon and butter. She mixed up biscuits and put them in to bake, then started the bacon sizzling in a pan and scrambled a large quantity of eggs. Coffee went on to boil, strong and black. She was just plating everything up when the back door opened and Marcus came in, stopping short when he saw her at the stove. "Good morning, Mr. Morgan," Lucia said. "Breakfast is ready." He looked at the laden table, then at her, something unreadable crossing his face. "You did not have to start today. I told you tomorrow was soon enough. I am an early riser by nature. It seemed foolish to lie in bed when there was work to be done." She gestured to the table. "Please sit. The eggs will get cold." Marcus hesitated, then moved to wash his hands in the basin by the back door before sitting at the table. Lucia poured him coffee and set a full plate before him, then made a plate for herself and sat across from him. They ate in silence for a few minutes. Lucia was acutely aware of his presence, of the size of him in the small kitchen, of the way he ate with steady concentration, as if he had not tasted a proper breakfast in a long time. Finally, he looked up at her. "This is good, thank you. You are welcome." More silence. Then Marcus cleared his throat. "I should tell you about the routine. I am usually up by 5, sometimes earlier depending on the season. I take coffee right away, but I do not usually eat until I have done the first round of chores. Billy and Tom are the same. If you want to feed us all, 8 o'clock would be a good time for breakfast." Lucia nodded, filing away the information. "And other meals, noon for dinner if you can manage it. I try to come in from the far pastures by then, but it does not always work out. If I am late, just leave something I can heat up. Supper is around 6 or 7, depending on the work." "That seems reasonable. Are there foods you particularly like or dislike?" "I am not picky, Miss Lawson. Anything hot and filling is fine." "I see, and supplies. How do you handle purchasing food and household items?" "I go to town once a month. You can make a list of what you need." He paused. "Or if you want to come along, that would be fine too." "Thank you. That would be helpful, at least initially, so I know what is available." Lucia took a breath. "Mr. Morgan, I noticed the house could use some attention beyond basic cleaning. Curtains, for instance, and some of the wallpaper is damaged. If you have no objection, I would like to make some improvements." His face closed off slightly. "That is not necessary." "Perhaps not necessary, but it would make the house more comfortable. And if you are paying me to keep house, I would like to do the job properly." Marcus set down his coffee cup carefully. "Miss Lawson, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but I would prefer you focus on cooking and basic cleaning." "That is what I need." There was a finality in his tone that made it clear the subject was closed. Lucia subsided, though she made a mental note to raise the issue again later, when they knew each other better. It was clear that Marcus Morgan had built walls around himself, walls as solid as those of his ranch house, and she would need to move carefully if she wanted to help him tear them down. Not that she should want to, she reminded herself firmly. She was here as an employee, nothing more. Whatever pain and loneliness Marcus carried was his own business, not hers. After breakfast, Marcus went back outside and Lucia threw herself into work. She cleaned the kitchen from top to bottom, then moved to the main room, scrubbing floors, washing windows, dusting every surface. The physical labor felt good after the days of travel, and she found satisfaction in seeing the rooms transform under her hands. Around noon, she prepared a simple dinner of fried potatoes, ham, and fresh bread. She was just setting the table when the back door opened and 3 men tramped in, Marcus followed by 2 younger men who had to be Billy and Tom. "Miss Lawson, these are my ranch hands," Marcus said, gesturing. "Billy Carter and Tom Fletcher. Boys, this is Miss Lucia Lawson, the new housekeeper." Billy was perhaps 20, with sandy hair and an open, friendly face. Tom was a few years older, darker, more reserved. Both of them looked surprised to see her, exchanging glances that Lucia could not quite interpret. "Pleased to meet you, madam," Billy said, pulling off his hat. "Sure smells good in here." "Thank you. Please sit down." The 4 of them crowded around the kitchen table and Lucia served the meal. The ranch hands ate with the concentrated focus of men doing hard physical labor, talking little. But she felt their sidelong glances, their curiosity. No doubt they had questions about the young woman who had appeared in their employer's kitchen. After the meal, the men went back to work, and Lucia continued her cleaning campaign. By the time evening came, she had worked her way through most of the downstairs. She was hot, dusty, and tired, but the house looked better than it had that morning. For supper, she made a beef stew with vegetables from the root cellar, along with cornbread and a dried apple pie she had found the makings for in the pantry. Again, the men ate in appreciative silence. This time, after the ranch hands left, Marcus lingered. "You have been working hard," he said, looking around the transformed kitchen. "It needed doing." "I suppose it did." He hesitated. "I am not used to having someone around. If I seem short with you, it is not personal. I have gotten out of the habit of talking much." It was the most personal thing he had said to her, and Lucia felt a small crack form in the wall between them. "I understand, Mr. Morgan. I will not take offense." He nodded and stood to go, then paused at the door. "My wife used to say that hope is all we ever really need. I have not thought about those words in a long time. But when you showed up yesterday with that determined look on your face and nothing but a carpet bag, it reminded me of her. She came west on a wagon train with just as little and just as much hope." He met Lucia's eyes briefly. "Anyway, I thought you should know. You doing all this, fixing up the place, it is not unwelcome. I just need time to get used to it." Before Lucia could respond, he was gone, the door closing softly behind him. She stood there in the kitchen, her heart beating a little faster, feeling as if something significant had just happened, though she could not quite name what. That night, she fell asleep thinking about those words. Hope is all we ever really need. And about the man who had spoken them, who carried his grief like a burden too heavy to set down. The days fell into a rhythm. Lucia rose early, made coffee, prepared breakfast for 4 hungry men. She cleaned and cooked, tended the kitchen garden she discovered behind the house, mended clothes and linens. The work was endless but satisfying. The house responded to her care, becoming gradually more welcoming. Marcus remained distant but not unkind. He spoke little, but Lucia began to learn his patterns, his preferences, the small things that pleased him. He liked his coffee strong and his meals substantial. He was meticulous about cleaning his boots before coming inside. He worked from dawn to well past dusk, driving himself relentlessly. Billy and Tom were friendlier, more willing to talk. Over meals, they told her about the ranch, about the cattle and the land, about the challenges of ranching in this country. Billy in particular seemed happy to have a woman in the house again, chatting easily about inconsequential things. Tom was quieter, but Lucia sensed he too appreciated her presence, the way the house felt more alive now. 2 weeks passed. The September heat began to ease and the mornings carried a hint of the autumn to come. Lucia had settled into her role, no longer a stranger in the house, but part of its daily functioning. She had made small improvements despite Marcus's initial resistance. Sewing simple curtains from muslin she found in a trunk upstairs, setting wildflowers on the table, arranging books more pleasingly on the shelves. Marcus said nothing about these changes, but she sometimes caught him looking at the flowers or running his hand along a new curtain, his expression unreadable. One evening, Lucia was on the back porch snapping beans for the next day when Marcus came around the corner of the house, leading his horse. He saw her and stopped. "Evening, Miss Lawson." "Good evening. Successful day." "Successful enough. Found some strays up in the north pasture." He tied the horse and came up the porch steps, settling against the railing. "Mind if I sit for a minute? Too tired to go straight to the barn just yet." "Of course not. This is your porch." He sat on the top step with a slight groan, stretching out his long legs. They sat in companionable silence for a few minutes, the only sound the snap of beans and the evening birdsong. "You have been here 2 weeks," Marcus said finally. "How are you finding it?" "I like it," Lucia said honestly. "It is quiet, but I do not mind quiet, and the work is satisfying." "You do not find it too isolated? Some people cannot handle being this far from town." "I find it peaceful, actually. Philadelphia was crowded and noisy. This is a pleasant change." Marcus looked at her with interest. "What made you leave Philadelphia?" It was the first personal question he had asked her. Lucia considered how much to share. "My parents died within 6 months of each other last year. My father had debts I could not pay. I lost the house. I worked as a housekeeper for a family for a while, but the position was not permanent. When I saw your advertisement, it seemed like an opportunity for a fresh start." "I am sorry about your parents." "Thank you." Lucia snapped another bean. "What about you, Mr. Morgan? Have you always ranched?" "My father started this place 30 years ago. I grew up here, learned the work from him. He died 5 years back. Heart gave out." Marcus stared out at the darkening landscape. "This land gets in your blood if you let it. I could never imagine being anywhere else. It is beautiful country." Sarah thought so too. She came west with her family, homesteaders. They settled about 20 miles from here, but the land was not good. Her father gave up after 3 years. They were heading back east when we met. I convinced her to stay. His voice had gone distant. She loved this place, loved fixing up the house, making it a home. After she died, I could not stand to look at all the things she had done. I packed most of it away. Lucia's hands stilled on the beans. That must have been very painful. It was, still is some days. He looked at her then, his blue-gray eyes direct. But I am starting to think maybe I was wrong to strip everything away. You have been making changes, small ones, and I find I do not mind as much as I thought I would. Maybe it is time to stop living in a shrine to grief. Grief is not something you get over, Mr. Morgan, but perhaps you can learn to live alongside it rather than inside it. You sound like you speak from experience. I do. Losing my parents taught me that much at least. Marcus nodded slowly. Sarah used to call me Marcus, not Mr. Morgan. I would be pleased if you did the same, Miss Lawson. Only if you call me Lucia. Lucia, he said, as if testing the name. It suits you. Something warm unfurled in Lucia's chest, something she firmly told herself was merely the pleasure of making a friend in this isolated place, nothing more. She went back to snapping beans, and Marcus stayed on the porch, talking more than he had since she arrived. He told her about the ranch, about his plans for expanding the herd, about the challenges of the coming winter. She found herself enjoying his voice, the deep rumble of it, the way he chose his words carefully. When full darkness fell, Marcus finally stood to go tend his horse. Thank you for the conversation, Lucia. It has been a while since I had one. Any time, Marcus. After that evening, things shifted between them in small but significant ways. Marcus talked more at meals, asking Lucia about her day, her plans for the house, her thoughts on various matters. He began to linger after supper, sitting at the kitchen table with coffee while she washed dishes, the two of them discussing everything from politics to the weather to the best way to make biscuits. Lucia found herself looking forward to these conversations more than she should. She told herself it was merely loneliness, the isolation making any human connection seem more significant than it was. But she could not deny that she liked Marcus, liked his quiet strength, his dry humor that appeared occasionally, his obvious intelligence and competence. And she was aware, though she tried not to be, that he was a handsome man, especially in those rare moments when he smiled. For his part, Marcus seemed to be gradually awakening from a long sleep. He smiled more often. He made small efforts to make the house feel more like a home again, bringing down boxes from the attic containing Sarah's curtains and rugs, telling Lucia she could use whatever she wanted. He even began working on small repairs he had been ignoring, fixing a loose porch board, replacing a cracked window pane. October arrived with a burst of golden aspen leaves and cold, clear nights. One morning, Lucia came downstairs to find a deer carcass hanging in the smokehouse and Marcus already butchering it in the yard. Went out before dawn, he explained when she came to investigate. Got lucky. This should keep us in meat for a good while. Can I help? He looked surprised. You know how to dress game. My father was a hunter. I learned young. All right then. Grab that knife. They worked side by side in the cool morning air, and Lucia was aware of his presence in a way that made her hands less steady than they should be. When their fingers brushed accidentally, reaching for the same tool, she felt a jolt that had nothing to do with surprise. Marcus felt it too. She saw it in the way he stilled, the quick glance he shot her. Neither of them said anything, but the air between them seemed charged with something new and unsettling. Later, after the meat was properly hung and salted, Marcus washed up at the pump while Lucia stood nearby, drying her own hands. You are full of surprises, Lucia Lawson, he said, a hint of amusement in his voice. Is there anything you cannot do? Plenty of things. I cannot rope a steer or break a horse. I could teach you if you wanted. I might take you up on that. Their eyes met and held for a moment too long, and Lucia felt her breath catch. There was something in Marcus's expression, something warm and intent that made her heart race. Then he looked away, clearing his throat. I should get back to work. Yes, and I have a roast to prepare. The moment broke, but its echo lingered all day, a sweet tension that Lucia could not quite shake. That evening, Billy mentioned that a dance was being held in town the following Saturday. The whole county comes out for it, he said enthusiastically. Music, food, everyone catching up. You should come, Miss Lucia. Be a good chance to meet folks. That sounds nice, Lucia said, though the idea of a crowd after weeks of solitude was a bit daunting. Marcus is coming too, right, boss? Tom said pointedly. Been a while since you went to one of these gatherings. Marcus looked uncomfortable. I do not know, lot of work to do. Work can wait for one evening, Billy pressed. Come on, boss, would be good for you, and Miss Lucia should not have to go alone. I am perfectly capable of going alone, Lucia interjected, not wanting Marcus to feel pressured. I know that, Billy said, but it would be more fun if we all went together. Marcus looked at Lucia, something uncertain in his expression. Would you want company? I do not dance, but I could drive you in the wagon, make sure you get there and back safely. If you want to go, I would appreciate the company, Lucia said carefully. All right then. We will go. Saturday arrived with brilliant blue skies and air so clear it seemed you could see forever. Lucia dressed in her best outfit, a dark blue dress she had not worn since leaving Philadelphia, and took extra care with her hair, pinning it up in a softer style than her usual practical braid. When she came downstairs, Marcus was waiting in the parlor, wearing dark trousers and a white shirt she had never seen before, his hair still damp from washing. He stood when she entered, and she saw something flicker in his eyes as he took in her appearance. You look very nice, Lucia. Thank you. So do you. The drive to town took nearly an hour, the wagon rattling along the now familiar road. They talked easily, more comfortable with each other than they had been when she first arrived. Marcus told her about the families she would meet, warning her which ones were gossips and which were genuinely friendly. Lucia found herself laughing at his dry observations, enjoying this lighter side of him. The dance was being held in the largest building in town, a meeting hall that served multiple purposes. When they arrived, the place was already crowded with people, the sound of fiddle music spilling out into the evening air. Marcus helped Lucia down from the wagon, his hand warm and steady around hers. Inside, it was hot and loud and cheerful. Lucia was immediately swept into introductions, meeting what felt like half the county. Martha Hendricks from the general store took her under her wing, introducing her to the other women, all of whom were curious about the young housekeeper living alone at the Morgan Ranch. Marcus Morgan is a good man, one woman said meaningfully. Deserves some happiness after what he has been through. I am just his housekeeper, Lucia said, feeling heat rise in her cheeks. Of course, dear, the woman said, but her tone suggested she thought otherwise. Lucia danced several times with Billy and Tom, and with other young men who were introduced to her. She was having a reasonably good time, but she found herself constantly aware of where Marcus was in the room. He stood mostly to the side, talking with other ranchers, drinking coffee and watching the festivities with that quiet, observant way of his. About halfway through the evening, he appeared at her elbow as she was catching her breath from a particularly energetic reel. Would you like some air? He asked. Yes, please. They walked out onto the porch, which was much quieter and cooler. A few other couples stood in small groups, talking softly. Marcus led her to the far end where they could look out at the dark shapes of the mountains against the starlit sky. Having a good time? He asked. I am. Everyone has been very welcoming. They are curious about you. Young woman living at my ranch, it has tongues wagging. I am sorry if my presence is causing gossip." "I do not care about gossip," Marcus said flatly. "Let them talk. I know the truth, and that is all that matters." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Marcus said, "I am glad you came west, Lucia. I did not realize how much I needed someone in that house until you arrived, not just for the cooking and cleaning, though that is appreciated, but for the company, for having someone to talk to. You have reminded me that I am still alive, still part of the world." Lucia's throat felt tight. "I am glad too. This has been good for me as well. I feel like I have found a place where I belong." Marcus turned to face her more fully, and in the dim light from the windows behind them, his eyes were very dark. "Lucia, I need to tell you something." Her heart began to beat faster. "What is it?" "I have been thinking a lot lately. About the future, about what I want my life to look like. For 3 years I have just been going through the motions, working myself into the ground to avoid feeling anything. But you have changed that. You have made me want more than just survival." He took a breath. "What I am trying to say, and doing a poor job of it, is that I have grown fond of you. More than fond. And I need to know if there is any chance you might feel the same way." Lucia stared at him, her mind racing. "Marcus, I know I am not much of a catch," he continued, the words coming faster now as if he needed to get them all out. "I am older than you, and I am not good at expressing feelings, and I live in the middle of nowhere doing hard, dirty work. But I can offer you a good life, a home, security. And I promise I would do my best to make you happy." "Marcus, stop," Lucia said softly, reaching out to touch his arm. "You are selling yourself short. You are a good man, an honorable man. Any woman would be fortunate to have you. And yes, I have feelings for you. How could I not? But I need to know that you are ready for this. I do not want to be a replacement for Sarah. I need to be sure that your heart is truly free to love again." "I will always love Sarah," Marcus said honestly. "She was my first love, and her death nearly destroyed me. But I have finally accepted that she is gone and I am still here. And these feelings I have for you, they are not about replacing her. They are about you, about the woman you are, about the way you make me feel when I am with you. Like I have been asleep for years and you have woken me up." Tears pricked Lucia's eyes. "I came here with nothing but hope, and you told me that hope is all we ever really need. I have been hoping, Marcus, even though I told myself I should not, that maybe you might see me as more than just an employee. I see you, Lucia. I see your strength and your kindness and your courage. I see the way you have taken my broken-down house and made it feel like a home again. I see the way you have been patient with me, giving me space to figure things out." He reached out tentatively and cupped her face in his calloused hand. "And I see the most beautiful woman I have ever known." Lucia turned her face into his palm, her eyes closing briefly. "We should take this slow. We have only known each other 6 weeks. I know. And I am willing to go as slow as you need. I just had to tell you how I felt. Could not keep it inside any longer. I am glad you told me." Lucia opened her eyes and smiled at him. "Now maybe we can stop pretending we do not notice each other." Marcus laughed, a sound of pure relief and happiness. "You noticed that too?" "I am pretty sure everyone has noticed, Marcus. We have not been as subtle as we thought." "I suppose not." He let his hand drop from her face, but he caught her hand in his, threading their fingers together. "So where do we go from here?" "We get to know each other better. We spend time together, talk about our hopes and dreams and fears. We build something real and lasting." "I would like that very much." They went back inside hand in hand, and if anyone noticed, they said nothing. For the rest of the evening, Marcus stayed close to Lucia, and when a slow waltz began, he surprised her by asking her to dance. "You said you did not dance," she said as he led her onto the floor. "I said I do not dance. I did not say I could not." He pulled her into the proper position, one hand at her waist, the other clasping her hand. Sarah taught me years ago. I have not done it since she died, but I think I remember. He was rusty but competent, and Lucia did not care about his occasional misstep. She cared only about the feeling of being held in his arms, of moving together to the music, of seeing the way he looked at her like she was something precious. When the dance ended, Marcus did not immediately let her go. "I think I am falling in love with you, Lucia Lawson," he said quietly, his mouth close to her ear. "I think I am falling in love with you too, Marcus Morgan," she whispered back. The drive home was quiet but charged with a new awareness. When they reached the ranch, Marcus helped her down from the wagon and they stood for a moment in the moonlight. "Thank you for tonight," Lucia said. "Thank you for saying yes to all of it." He walked her to the door, and at the threshold he bent and kissed her forehead gently. "Good night, Lucia. Sleep well." "Good night, Marcus." Lucia went inside, her heart full to bursting. She climbed the stairs to her room and sat on her bed, still wearing her blue dress, trying to process everything that had happened. She had come west expecting only employment, a chance to survive. Instead, she had found something she had not even known she was looking for: a place to belong and a man to love. The next morning, things were both the same and different. The work continued as always, but now there were small moments of connection. A smile across the breakfast table, a touch of hands when passing something, conversations that went deeper than surface pleasantries. Marcus began coming in for coffee after the morning chores, sitting with Lucia at the kitchen table for half an hour before going back out. They talked about everything, learning each other's histories, dreams, disappointments. Lucia told him about growing up in Philadelphia, about her close relationship with her parents, about the pain of losing them and the struggle to survive alone. Marcus talked about his childhood on the ranch, about his difficult relationship with his father who had been hard and unforgiving, about meeting Sarah and how she had softened him, taught him it was all right to be gentle. "I became hard again after she died," he admitted. "Closed myself off. I did not want to feel anything because feeling meant hurting. But you have shown me that closing yourself off is not living, it is just existing. And I am tired of just existing." As October gave way to November, their relationship deepened. Marcus courted Lucia properly, despite the fact that they lived in the same house. He brought her wildflowers from the high meadows. He took her riding to show her the most beautiful spots on the ranch. He read to her in the evenings from books of poetry he brought down from the attic, books that had been Sarah's but which he could now open without pain. One particularly beautiful Sunday, Marcus saddled 2 horses and told Lucia they were going on a picnic. She packed food, and they rode up into the foothills, following a creek until they reached a spot where the water pooled into a clear, still pond surrounded by golden aspens. "This is my favorite place on the ranch," Marcus said as they dismounted. "Sarah loved it too. I have not been here since she died." They spread a blanket and ate the food Lucia had packed, talking and laughing in the golden autumn sunlight. After they ate, Marcus lay back on the blanket, his hands behind his head, looking up at the sky through the aspen branches. "Lucia, I want to talk to you about the future," he said. She lay down beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. "All right. I know we have not been courting very long. By conventional standards, we should wait longer, but I am 30 years old and I know my own mind. I know what I want, and what I want is you, as my wife, as my partner, as the woman I build the rest of my life with." He turned his head to look at her. "I am asking you to marry me, Lucia. Will you?" Lucia's heart swelled. She had known this was coming, had felt it building, but hearing the actual words still made her breath catch. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes, I will marry you, Marcus." He rolled onto his side, propping himself up on one elbow, his face alight with joy. "Really? You are sure? I am absolutely sure. I love you, Marcus. I want to spend my life with you. He kissed her then, their first real kiss, and it was everything Lucia had imagined and more. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathless. I do not have a ring yet, Marcus said. I will get you a proper one in town. I do not need a ring, I just need you. You will have both. He sat up, pulling her with him. I want to do this right, Lucia. I want to give you a real wedding with all the trimmings. I want everyone to know you are mine and I am yours. They rode back to the ranch in the golden afternoon light, both of them giddy with happiness. When they told Billy and Tom the news at supper, the two ranch hands were genuinely delighted. About time, boss, Tom said, grinning. We have been wondering when you would get around to it. You knew. Everyone knew, Billy laughed. The way you two look at each other, it has been obvious for weeks. They were married 3 weeks later in the small church in Downeyville, with what seemed like the entire county in attendance. Martha Hendricks had taken charge of organizing everything, declaring that Marcus Morgan deserved a proper wedding celebration after all he had been through. Lucia wore a simple white dress she and Martha had worked on together, altering one of Sarah's dresses that Marcus had saved. It felt right somehow, a blessing from the past into the future. Marcus wore a new suit ordered from Sacramento, and he looked so handsome that Lucia's breath caught when she saw him waiting at the altar. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. When the preacher pronounced them man and wife, Marcus kissed Lucia with such tenderness that several women in the congregation wiped away tears. The celebration afterward was held in the same hall where the dance had been, with food, music, and genuine happiness. Lucia danced with her new husband, with Billy and Tom, with George Hendricks and various other men from the county. Marcus, for his part, seemed more relaxed and happy than anyone could remember seeing him in years. As evening fell, they rode back to the ranch in the wagon, now decorated with trailing ribbons and tin cans that rattled behind them. "Happy, Mrs. Morgan?" Marcus asked, his arm around her shoulders. "Happier than I ever imagined I could be," Lucia said, leaning into him. That night, in the bedroom that was now theirs together, Marcus was gentle and patient, taking his time to show Lucia how much he loved her. Afterward, they lay tangled together, talking softly in the darkness. "I never thought I would feel this way again," Marcus murmured, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "After Sarah died, I was certain I was done with love, done with letting anyone close. I was wrong." "You were hurt," Lucia said gently. "It is natural to want to protect yourself." "I am glad I failed at protecting myself. Glad you got past my defenses." He kissed the top of her head. "You have given me my life back, Lucia. More than that, you have given me hope for the future. For the first time in 3 years, I can imagine growing old, having children, building something that matters, all because of you." "We will build it together," Lucia said. "That is what marriage is it not? Building a life together, brick by brick, day by day." "Yes. And I promise to be a good partner to you, to honor you and cherish you and work beside you every day of my life." "I promise the same." They fell asleep in each other's arms, and Lucia thought drowsily that she had never felt so safe, so cherished, so completely at home. Life settled into a new rhythm. Lucia was no longer just the housekeeper but the mistress of the ranch, Marcus's full partner in every way. They worked together, planned together, made decisions together. The house continued to transform under Lucia's care, becoming warmer and more welcoming with each passing week. Winter came to the California mountains, bringing snow and cold. Lucia and Marcus spent the long evenings together by the fire, reading, talking, making plans for the spring. On particularly cold nights, Billy and Tom would come in from the bunkhouse to join them, and the 4 of them would play cards or share stories. It was a good winter, peaceful and productive. Marcus seemed to grow younger before Lucia's eyes, as if happiness had reversed the aging that grief had caused. He smiled often now, laughed regularly, sang sometimes while he worked. Seeing him so content filled Lucia with a quiet joy that never seemed to diminish. Spring arrived in a rush of wildflowers and new calves. Marcus and his men were busy from dawn to well past dark, and Lucia hardly saw her husband except at meals. But even exhausted and covered in dust, Marcus always took a moment to kiss her, to ask about her day, to remind her that she was loved. One morning in late April, Lucia woke feeling distinctly unwell. She made it to the basin just in time to be violently sick. Marcus, who had been dressing for work, was at her side immediately. "Lucia, what is wrong? Are you all right?" "I think so," she said weakly, wiping her mouth. "My stomach has been feeling off for a few days now." Marcus looked at her searchingly, and then understanding dawned in his eyes. "Lucia, do you think? Could you be with child?" She had been wondering the same thing. "It is possible. I have been tired lately and my monthly courses are late." A slow, wondering smile spread across Marcus's face. "A baby, we are going to have a baby. We do not know for certain yet, but you think so?" "Yes," Lucia admitted, her own smile growing. "Yes, I think so." Marcus pulled her into his arms, holding her carefully as if she might break. "A baby," he repeated, his voice full of awe. "Oh, Lucia, I never thought. After everything, I never thought I would get this chance." Over the following weeks, as Lucia's condition became more certain, Marcus became almost comically protective. He did not want her lifting anything heavy, insisted she rest more, worried constantly that she was working too hard. Lucia found it endearing and exasperating in equal measure. "Marcus, I am pregnant, not ill," she said one day when he tried to stop her from carrying a basket of laundry. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time. I am perfectly capable of doing my normal work." I know, I cannot help worrying. I appreciate your concern, truly, but you have to let me live my life. I promise I will be careful and will ask for help if I need it." He relented, though Lucia could tell it cost him. But his joy and excitement were obvious to everyone. He told Billy and Tom the news, then rode to town to tell Martha and George. Soon, the whole county knew that Marcus and Lucia Morgan were expecting their first child. Summer passed in a golden haze. Lucia's belly grew, and with it, Marcus's delight. He talked to the baby through her stomach, his big hand gentle on the swell of their child. He built a cradle in the evenings, working carefully on the fine woodwork. He asked Lucia endless questions about what they would need, what she wanted, how she was feeling. "You are going to be a wonderful father," Lucia told him one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "I hope so. I want to be better than my father was, kinder, more patient." "You will be, I have no doubt." In October, exactly 1 year after Marcus had first told Lucia he had feelings for her, their son was born. The labor was long and difficult, with Martha Hendricks attending as midwife. Marcus paced downstairs for hours, sick with worry, until finally he heard the strong, healthy cry of his child. Martha appeared at the top of the stairs, beaming. "You have a son, Marcus, and Lucia is fine. Tired, but fine. Come meet your boy." Marcus took the stairs 3 at a time. In the bedroom, Lucia lay propped against pillows, looking exhausted but radiant, holding a small bundle wrapped in blankets. When Marcus entered, she looked up with a smile that took his breath away. "Come meet your son," she said softly. Marcus approached the bed as if in a dream. Lucia pulled back the blanket to reveal a tiny, red-faced infant with a shock of dark hair. The baby's eyes were closed, his little hands curled into fists. "He is perfect," Marcus breathed, reaching out to touch one impossibly small hand. The baby's fingers immediately curled around his, gripping with surprising strength. "He is absolutely perfect." "What should we name him?" Lucia asked. They had discussed names but had never quite decided. Now, looking at his son, Marcus said, "Michael. Michael James Morgan, after my grandfather." "If you agree." "Michael James," Lucia repeated, testing the name. "I like it. Hello, Michael." The baby stirred at the sound of his name, making small mewing sounds. Marcus sat carefully on the edge of the bed, and Lucia transferred the baby into his arms. He held his son with infinite care, this hard man who worked with his hands and battled the elements, cradling the tiny life with a gentleness that made Lucia's eyes fill with tears. "I will do right by you," Marcus whispered to the baby. "I promise. I will be the father you deserve, and I will love you every day of your life. You and your mother, you are my whole world now." Lucia reached up to touch Marcus's face, and he turned to kiss her palm. "We made something beautiful," she said. "We did. Out of nothing but hope, we built this. A life, a love, a family. It is more than I ever dreamed of." The first months of parenthood were exhausting and wonderful. Michael was a good baby, healthy and growing fast, with his father's dark hair and his mother's brown eyes. Marcus was besotted, spending every free moment with his son, holding him, talking to him, showing him off to anyone who visited. Lucia watched her husband transform into a father and fell even more deeply in love with him. Marcus had always been strong, but now she saw his true tenderness, the depths of his capacity for love. He would walk the floor for hours with a fussy Michael, singing old songs in his rough voice. He changed diapers without complaint, gave baths with painstaking care, and worried constantly that he was not doing everything right. "You are doing everything perfectly," Lucia assured him one night, watching as he rocked Michael to sleep. "How do you know? What if I am making mistakes?" "All parents make mistakes, Marcus. What matters is that he is loved, and he is. He is so loved." As Michael grew from infant to toddler, the ranch prospered. Marcus hired 2 more men to help with the expanding herds, and talk began of buying additional land. The house, which had once felt too large and empty, now rang with the sounds of family. Michael's laughter, Lucia's singing, Marcus's deep voice reading bedtime stories. On their second wedding anniversary, Marcus surprised Lucia with a trip to Sacramento. They left Michael with Martha for 3 days and took the train to the city, staying in a real hotel and eating in restaurants and shopping in stores that made Lucia gasp at their size and selection. "You did not have to do all this," she said as they walked down a busy street, her arm linked through his. "I wanted to. You have given me so much, Lucia. A home, a son, a reason to wake up happy every morning. This is just a small way of saying thank you." "I do not need thanks for loving you, Marcus, but I will not lie and say I am not enjoying this immensely." They bought toys for Michael, a new dress for Lucia, books for Marcus. They went to a theater performance and held hands in the dark like young sweethearts. They made love in their hotel room with a freedom and abandon they could not manage at home with a toddler in the next room. It was a magical 3 days, a reminder that they were not just parents, but also husband and wife, lovers, partners. When they returned home, Michael toddled to them with arms outstretched, and Lucia thought her heart might burst from the perfection of the moment. Her son in her arms, her husband beside her, their home waiting. The years passed in a blur of work and love and growth. Michael grew into a bright, energetic boy who followed his father everywhere, learning the ranch work almost before he could walk properly. 2 years after Michael was born, Lucia gave birth to a daughter they named Emma Grace, who had her father's blue-gray eyes and a smile that could charm birds from trees. Marcus was just as besotted with his daughter as he had been with his son. And the sight of this big, rough rancher being wrapped around the tiny finger of his little girl never failed to make Lucia smile. "I am outnumbered now," Marcus said one evening, holding Emma while Michael climbed on his back. 3-1. "You love it and you know it," Lucia teased. "I do. God help me, I do." When Emma was 3, another son arrived, whom they named Samuel, completing their family. The house that had once been a silent monument to grief was now bursting with life, children's voices echoing in every room, toys scattered everywhere, the sound of laughter a constant presence. Marcus and Lucia would sometimes stand on the porch in the evening, watching their children play in the yard, and marvel at how much their lives had changed. "You remember the day I arrived?" Lucia asked one such evening, leaning against Marcus's solid warmth. "I remember thinking you looked too young, too delicate for ranch life. I remember worrying that I had made a mistake asking for a housekeeper when I was not ready to have anyone in my space." He pulled her closer. "I was so wrong. You were exactly what I needed, even though I did not know it. You saved my life, Lucia. You saved mine too. I came here with nothing but hope, and you gave me everything I never knew I needed." "Hope is all we ever really need," Marcus said, echoing those words from so long ago. "Everything else builds from there." As the children grew older, the ranch continued to thrive. Michael, now 10, was already a skilled horseman and a help to his father. Emma, at 8, was showing signs of inheriting her mother's talent for making a house a home, always arranging flowers and rearranging the furniture. Samuel, at 5, was the family comedian, keeping everyone laughing with his antics. Lucia had taken over the financial side of the ranch, proving to have a head for numbers that Marcus freely admitted was better than his own. Together, they had built the Morgan Ranch into one of the most successful operations in the county. But more than the financial success, more than the expanded herds and the new barn and the additional land they had purchased, was the richness of the life they had built together. They had created a home filled with love, a family bound together by more than blood but by choice and commitment, and the deep knowledge that they belonged to each other. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Marcus gave Lucia a locket containing pictures of their 3 children. 10 years, he said as he fastened it around her neck. "The best 10 years of my life." "Mine too," Lucia said, touching the locket. "Who would have thought that day I arrived with my carpet bag and my hope that this is where we would end up? I would not trade a single moment. Not the hard times, not the scary times, not even the sleepless nights with colicky babies. It has all been worth it for us." They kissed, a kiss that held 10 years of love and partnership and the promise of all the years to come. As the sun set over the ranch, painting the mountains gold and purple, their 3 children ran into the house, dirty and happy from a day of play. The house filled with noise and laughter, with the chaos and joy of family life. Lucia stood at the stove preparing supper, Marcus beside her slicing bread, their children setting the table and arguing good-naturedly about whose turn it was to feed the chickens. This was her life now. This was what she had built from nothing but hope and determination. A home, a family, a love that grew stronger with each passing year. She had come to California as a desperate young woman with no prospects and no future, and she had found everything she never knew to hope for. That night, after the children were in bed and the house was quiet, Lucia and Marcus sat on the porch as they so often did, watching the stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky. "I have been thinking," Marcus said, his arm around her shoulders. "In a few years, Michael will be old enough to take on more responsibility. Maybe it is time we took that trip back east you have talked about. Let you visit Philadelphia again, show the children where you came from." "I would like that," Lucia said. Though I am not sure I think of Philadelphia as home anymore. This is home. This ranch, this life, you and our children, this is where I belong. I feel the same way, but it would be good for the children to see more of the world. And I would like to take you places, show you things, give you adventures. You have already given me the greatest adventure of all, Lucia said, turning to kiss him. You have given me a life beyond anything I could have imagined. Everything else is just extra. Well then, we will make sure to have plenty of extra, Marcus said with a grin. They sat in comfortable silence, the kind of silence that only comes from years of knowing someone completely, of being so comfortable together that words are not always necessary. The night air was cool and smelled of pine and grass and home. Inside the house, they could hear one of the children stirring, probably Samuel having another of his vivid dreams. Lucia started to get up, but Marcus stopped her. I will go, he said. You stay here and enjoy the quiet. She watched him go inside, this man who had been nothing but a name on a piece of paper 10 years ago and who was now her whole world. She heard his deep voice soothing Samuel, heard the boy's sleepy response, heard the creak of the bed as Marcus tucked him back in. When Marcus returned, he pulled Lucia to her feet. Dance with me. There is no music. We do not need music. So they danced on the porch under the stars, moving slowly to a rhythm only they could hear, and Lucia thought about the long road that had brought her here. The grief and loss that had driven her west. The fear and uncertainty of arriving in a strange place. The gradual unfolding of love between two wounded people finding healing in each other. It had not always been easy. There had been hard times, lean years when the cattle prices fell and money was tight. There had been illness and injury, worry and fear. Emma had been born early and had nearly not survived those first fragile weeks. Samuel had fallen from a horse and broken his arm, and Lucia had aged years in the hours waiting for the doctor. The work was never ending, the demands of ranch life relentless. But through it all, they had each other. Through every trial and triumph, every joy and sorrow, they had faced it together. That was what marriage was, Lucia had learned. Not just the romance and passion, though there was plenty of that even after 10 years. But the quiet steadiness of partnership, of knowing someone had your back no matter what, of building something larger than yourself. What are you thinking about? Marcus asked, his cheek against her hair. Everything. Nothing. How lucky I am, how much I love you. I am the lucky one. I was dead inside when you arrived, Lucia. Just going through the motions, waiting for my time to run out. You brought me back to life. You gave me a reason to care about tomorrow. We saved each other, Lucia said simply. That is what love does. It saves us from our worst selves, from the darkness, from giving up. They stopped dancing but stood holding each other, two people who had found their way home against all odds. The future stretched before them, full of promise and possibility. Their children would grow and eventually start families of their own. The ranch would continue to prosper and expand. There would be grandchildren someday, and the joy of watching the next generation grow up on this land they had built together. But all of that was yet to come. For now, there was just this moment, this perfect instant of peace and contentment and love. Two people who had taken nothing but hope and built an entire life from it, proving that sometimes the best things are born from the hardest circumstances, and that love, when it is real and true, can heal even the deepest wounds. Come on, Marcus said finally. Let us go to bed. Tomorrow starts early. Tomorrow always starts early, Lucia laughed. That is ranch life. And would you change it? Not for anything in the world. They went inside, checking on each child before retiring to their own room. In the big bed they shared, Marcus pulled Lucia close, and she fit against him as perfectly as always, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist. "I love you," he murmured into the darkness. "I love you too, always and forever." They fell asleep like that, as they had every night for 10 years, and would every night for all the years to come. Outside, the ranch slept under the California stars. Inside, a family rested safe and warm, bound together by love and hope, and the unbreakable bonds they had forged together. Lucia had come to Downeyville with nothing but a carpetbag and hope, and Marcus Morgan had told her that hope was all they ever really needed. How right he had been. From that tiny seed of hope, they had grown an entire forest. A family, a home, a love that would last their entire lives and beyond, passed down through their children and their children's children, a legacy of what two people could build when they refused to give up on the possibility of happiness. The ranch continued through the seasons, through the years. Michael grew into a fine young man, eventually taking over more and more of the daily operations. Emma became a teacher in Downeyville, married a good man, and brought her own children to the ranch for summer visits. Samuel, the family's comedian, surprised everyone by going to university and becoming a lawyer, though he returned often to help with the ranch work, saying it kept him grounded. Marcus and Lucia grew older together, their dark hair turning silver, their faces lined with the marks of years lived fully. But their love never dimmed. If anything, it grew deeper, richer, tempered by time and experience into something unshakable. On their 25th anniversary, their children threw them a party at the ranch. Friends and family came from all over the county to celebrate. During the toasts, Michael stood up, tall and strong like his father, and said, "My parents taught me that love is not just a feeling but a choice you make every single day." Watching them build this life together, watching the way they support each other and work together and never give up on each other, that has been the greatest gift they could give me and my sisters. They have shown us what a real partnership looks like. Lucia, sitting beside Marcus with his hand clasped in hers, felt tears sliding down her cheeks. She looked at her husband and saw the same emotion reflected in his eyes. Later, when everyone had gone and they were alone again on their porch, their favorite spot, Marcus said, 25 years. Sometimes it feels like yesterday you stepped off that stage, and sometimes it feels like you have been part of my life forever. Both things can be true, Lucia said. I feel the same way. I can hardly remember the person I was before I came here. That Lucia seems like someone from another life entirely. She was brave, Marcus said, braver than she knew. It took incredible courage to leave everything you knew and come west alone. I was desperate. Desperation looks like courage sometimes. It was courage. You could have given up, stayed in Philadelphia and accepted whatever scraps life threw you. Instead, you took a chance on an unknown future. That is courage in its purest form. They sat in comfortable silence, the kind they had perfected over 25 years of marriage. Around them, the ranch settled into night, the familiar sounds of cattle and wind and the distant howl of coyotes. Lucia thought about all the nights they had sat here, through every season and situation. Early in their marriage, nervous and excited about the future. During her pregnancies, Marcus's hand on her swollen belly. Through hard years when money was tight and they worried about making it through. Through good years of prosperity and growth. Through the anxious years of raising teenagers when they clung to each other and tried to remember that this too would pass. Through it all, this porch had been their sanctuary, their place to reconnect and remember what mattered most. "You remember the night I proposed?" Marcus asked suddenly. "Of course, up by the pond with the aspens all golden around us. You were so nervous. I was terrified you would say no. I could never have said no. I was already in love with you. I knew I wanted to marry you that first week you were here, Marcus admitted. When you lectured me about not needing curtains, standing there all fierce and determined, I thought, this woman is going to change my life, and I was right. You changed mine too. You gave me a home and a family and a purpose. You saw me, Marcus. Really saw me, not just as a housekeeper or an employee, but as a person with hopes and dreams and something to offer. That meant everything. Marcus brought her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. You offered me everything. You still do, every single day. As they sat there, Lucia thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment. How she had answered that simple advertisement, never imagining where it would lead. How Marcus had been drowning in grief and loneliness, convinced his chance at happiness was over. How two broken people had found each other and built something whole and beautiful. She thought about all the small moments that had added up to a lifetime. Marcus bringing her wildflowers from the high meadows, the way he had learned to braid Emma's hair, the patience with which he had taught Michael to ride, the silly songs he sang to Samuel, the way he still kissed her every morning before going out to work, and every evening when he came back in, the way he looked at her across a crowded room like she was the only person in the world, the way he had held her through her father's death anniversary each year, understanding that some griefs never fully heal but can be survived with love and support. And she thought about her own journey, from the desperate young woman who had arrived with nothing to the confident, capable ranch wife she had become. She had learned so much over the years: how to birth a calf, how to shoot a rifle, how to keep the ranch books, how to preserve food for long winters, how to treat common injuries and illnesses. But more than practical skills, she had learned what it meant to be truly loved, to be a partner, to build something lasting. I am glad I came west, Lucia said softly. Even with all the hardships and challenges, I would not change a single thing. Me neither, Marcus said. Well, maybe I would change the fact that I wasted 3 years after Sarah died just existing instead of living. But then again, if I had not, the timing might have been different and I might have missed you entirely. So maybe even that was necessary. Everything happened exactly as it needed to, Lucia said. We found each other at the right time when we were both ready, even if we did not know it. They stayed on the porch until late, talking about their children, their plans for the ranch, their dreams for the future. Finally, Marcus stood and pulled Lucia to her feet. Come on, wife. Morning comes early. It always does, Lucia laughed. The same exchange they had been having for 25 years. In their bedroom, they prepared for sleep with the comfortable ease of long familiarity. Marcus hung up his shirt while Lucia brushed out her long silver hair. They moved around each other smoothly, a dance perfected over thousands of nights. When they climbed into bed, Marcus pulled Lucia close, and she settled against him with a contented sigh. I love you, Lucia Morgan, he said into the darkness. I love you too, Marcus Morgan, today, tomorrow, and always. The years continued to roll forward. Marcus and Lucia celebrated their 30th anniversary, then their 35th. They became grandparents multiple times over, and the ranch house often rang with the laughter of grandchildren during visits. They watched their children build their own lives, make their own mistakes and triumphs, and felt the deep satisfaction of knowing they had raised good, capable, loving people. The ranch continued to prosper under Michael's increasingly skilled management, with Marcus transitioning into a more advisory role. He still worked, still rode out to check the cattle and mend fences, but at a more measured pace. Lucia too scaled back her workload, hiring help for the heavier household tasks while still maintaining her role as the heart of the home. They traveled some, taking that trip back east they had talked about, visiting San Francisco, and even sailing to Hawaii for their 40th anniversary. But they always came back to the ranch, to the home they had built together, knowing that this was where they belonged. On Lucia's 60th birthday, Marcus gave her a leather-bound journal. "Write our story," he said, "so that our grandchildren and great-grandchildren will know how we built this life, how we found each other, how love saved us both." So Lucia wrote, sitting at the kitchen table in the quiet morning hours before the house woke, recording everything. How she had arrived with nothing but hope. How Marcus had said those fateful words, "Hope is all we ever really need." How they had fallen in love slowly and surely, building trust and affection day by day. How they had married and started a family, survived hardships and celebrated joys, grown old together while their love only deepened. She wrote about the lessons they had learned. That grief does not have to be the end of your story, that taking risks can lead to the greatest rewards, that love is worth fighting for even when it is scary. She wrote about the importance of partnership, of facing life's challenges together, of never giving up on each other even in the hard times. When she finished, months later, she gave the journal to Marcus to read. He sat in his favorite chair, reading through the afternoon and into the evening, and when he finished, there were tears on his weathered cheeks. "You made us sound heroic," he said. "We were heroic," Lucia replied. "Maybe not in a grand, dramatic way, but in the everyday courage it takes to build a life, to love fully, to keep going even when things are hard. That is its own kind of heroism." Marcus pulled her onto his lap, something he had done throughout their marriage, and held her close. "Thank you for writing it, for remembering, for making sure our story will not be forgotten." "How could I forget? You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Marcus Morgan. Every word I wrote is true." They stayed like that for a long time, holding each other. Two people who had beaten the odds and built something beautiful from the ashes of their separate griefs. As they approached their 50th anniversary, their children began planning a massive celebration. The whole county was invited, along with family from all over California and beyond. It would be held at the ranch, naturally, under the big sky that had witnessed their entire journey together. But a week before the celebration, Marcus had a heart attack while out riding. Michael found him and got him back to the house, where the doctor was summoned. Marcus survived, but he was weak, and the doctor was clear that his heart was badly damaged. Lucia never left his side during his recovery, sleeping in a chair next to their bed, caring for him with the same dedication she had brought to everything in their life together. Marcus, for his part, was a terrible patient, impatient with his weakness and frustrated by his limitations. "Lie still," Lucia scolded him one afternoon when he tried to get up against doctor's orders. "You are not going to the barn, and that is final." "I need to check on the calving," Marcus grumbled. "Michael is checking on the calving. You need to rest and heal. I am not an invalid." "You are if you do not follow doctor's orders." Lucia sat on the edge of the bed and took his hand. "Marcus, I nearly lost you. Do you understand that? I need you to take this seriously. I am not ready to lose you." The fight went out of him at the fear in her voice. "I am sorry. I just hate being helpless." "You are not helpless. You are healing. There is a difference." She stroked his hair, now completely white. "We have been through too much together for you to be reckless now. I need more years with you, many more years." "I will do whatever the doctor says," Marcus promised. "I want those years too, Lucia. Every single one I can get." He recovered slowly but surely, and by the time their 50th anniversary arrived, he was well enough to attend the celebration, though he spent most of it sitting rather than standing. The ranch was packed with people, multiple generations gathering to honor the couple who had built such a remarkable life together. Michael gave a speech, as did Emma and Samuel. There were toasts and stories and laughter and tears. A band played the same songs that had been played at their wedding 50 years before, and though Marcus could not dance with Lucia, they stood together, his arms around her waist, swaying slightly to the music. 50 years, Marcus said, his voice rough with emotion. Half a century with you, and it still does not seem like enough. We will take every day we get and be grateful for it, Lucia said. That is all we can do. The celebration continued into the night, but Marcus and Lucia slipped away early, retreating to their porch, their sanctuary. They sat in the darkness, listening to the sounds of music and laughter from the barn where the party continued. It is a good legacy, Marcus said. 3 children, 8 grandchildren so far, and another on the way. The ranch more prosperous than I ever dreamed. Our family happy and healthy. We did well, Lucia. We did very well indeed. And it all started because you were brave enough to answer an advertisement and come west with nothing but hope. And because you were wise enough to know that hope is all we ever really need. They sat in the comfortable silence of 50 years together, watching the stars wheel slowly overhead, knowing that whatever time they had left would be spent exactly like this. Together, grateful, fully alive in every moment. Marcus lived another 5 years after his heart attack. Years of diminished capacity, but not diminished joy. He could no longer work the ranch, but he could sit on the porch and direct operations, could hold his grandchildren and tell them stories, could kiss his wife every morning and tell her he loved her. When he finally died, peacefully in his sleep at the age of 80, Lucia was beside him, holding his hand as she had held it for 55 years of marriage. She grieved deeply but not hopelessly, because she knew how lucky they had been to find each other, to build the life they had shared. At his funeral, Lucia stood before the assembled crowd and spoke from the heart. Marcus always said that hope is all we ever really need, and he was right. I came to California with nothing but hope, and he helped me build that hope into a life beyond my wildest dreams. We had 55 years of marriage, 3 wonderful children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. We built a home and a legacy. We loved deeply and were deeply loved in return. What more could anyone ask from life? She lived another 10 years herself, still sharp and capable, still the heart of the Morgan Ranch. She saw more grandchildren born and even a few great-grandchildren. She continued to work in her garden, to cook Sunday dinners for the extended family, to sit on that porch every evening and remember. When she finally died at the age of 87, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, her last words were about Marcus. "Tell him I am coming," she whispered to Michael. "Tell him I never stopped loving him for a single moment." At her funeral, Michael read from the journal she had written years before, telling the story of how his parents had met, fallen in love, built a life together. "My mother came west with nothing but hope," he concluded, "and my father told her that hope is all we ever really need." Together, they proved that truth. They took nothing and made everything. They took broken hearts and made them whole. They took an empty house and filled it with love and laughter and life. That is their legacy to all of us. That hope, combined with love and hard work and commitment, can create miracles. The ranch continued, passed down through the generations, each one adding their own chapter to the story Marcus and Lucia had begun. But at the heart of it all was always their love story, the tale of 2 wounded people who had found healing and hope in each other, who had built something lasting from the ashes of their separate griefs. And on quiet evenings, when the wind whispered through the pines and the stars blazed overhead, it was said that if you sat very still on that old porch, you could almost hear them. Marcus's deep voice and Lucia's lighter one, talking and laughing and loving each other still, their spirits forever entwined in the place they had made home. The lesson of their lives echoed through the years, passed from generation to generation. That hope is indeed all we ever really need, because from hope springs everything else: courage and love and resilience and joy. And that true love, when it is real and committed and willing to do the work, can overcome anything, can heal any wound, can build any dream. Marcus and Lucia Morgan had proven that truth with their lives, and their legacy lived on, a testament to the power of hope and the enduring nature of love, forever remembered in the house they had built together, on the land they had worked together, in the family they had created together. Two people who had shown up with nothing but hope, and built absolutely everything from it.